Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John's report. It's for the 8th of December. Well, anyone who didn't pay attention to that magenta moving over the white NBI, as well as the pivot up of red, the continuing drop of DOC orange below the steel at that particular point when we were just below the 46.13, really wasn't following what we've been talking about with NBI, and sure enough, well, we gapped open well above the 46.13, and you would think that plus 60 might be done, but no. There was a little resistance at the ABM yellow, and once that broke through, nothing stopping it to actually move towards the 100, literally, at least from a ES standpoint, YM as well. We had the 34, and like I said, institutions, let's get back above that 50%, they were eating that up, and they just took it as far as they could take it. From an NQ standpoint, we already knew it was stronger. It supported off the 50%. It was a little late on the turnaround setup. It wasn't quite as strong from an NBI reading or from a DSC reading, but nonetheless, it was still starting its press. And of course, you've got the dark magenta, dark cyan, actually, it's a buy signal as the bar moved forward. So it matched what the S&P was showing as well. And then from a gold standpoint, a slight increase. There's still a lot of pent-up inflationary pressures that are going to have to be dealt with. And of course, still the debt ceiling thing, though, I think the indication is they think that everything is solved as far as that goes. Euro still isn't going to go anywhere. No question about it. In fact, it's gotten much worse here because now they've returned to mandatory mask mandates and stuff outdoors. Just crazy restrictions throughout the EU. It's really just going to destroy any potential GDP growth or anything coming out of the Eurozone. And if the US isn't careful, it'll go right back in that same category. From an oil standpoint, of course, it's going to be interesting to see what the demand side does to this, because the more they talk about any kind of variance, things like that, it always puts downward pressure on it, and that's helped from an inflationary standpoint by doing that. But there are broader catalysts to economic growth that oftentimes they don't care, because the economy really runs off a lot of perception. And when enough people become concerned about the future and that they withhold movement, and that really drives expenditures in that to zero fast. And oftentimes it's a big miscalculation for economists, because if you don't capture that change in sentiment, boy, things can come to a halt very fast, and wouldn't be surprised to see things really start taking a nosedive beginning in the first quarter of next year as that comes through. So while you may be getting a Christmas rally as usually is expected, there's some headwinds going forward. Bitcoin, right back to the 51K algo, capturing again resistance there and plenty of selling off of that pop, but it was a huge liquidation, and it's going to have some interesting implications going forward. It could be some difficulty for it to try and maintain that, and certainly wouldn't be surprised to see return back towards that 48 of the captures. Enough interest to hold it up, that would be interesting to see, so we'll keep an eye out for it. The same thing from an Ether standpoint. It's always had trouble around that 45 range, but still been able to hold above the 4K number pretty decent. So that seems to be the relative support range. For a 50K, it was pretty clear from all the way back to before yesterday. Buy signals came in off that and pretty much held pretty true, even when this capped up and we started to get the little weakness. And immediately the red moved back above white, and you got to pick it back up a magenta, even as it sold out on the secondary buy, the first buy that came up through here, and the second one added in going forward. And just from a protection standpoint, because there were some sell signals that came in, you did have the crossover, but as soon as it reverses, it captures that return move from intraday. Well, that's the way it looked at the end. Plenty of it, you can see. Just the end of the day, it started with that buy signal, and literally once we were in that mode, we were well over the 25 for the shakeout magenta, and that literally continued until even we got into the secondary range, but there was never any point where we were getting crosses of white NBA to signal over the red to signal any kind of deterioration. It wasn't until we got much later on that we started to see some weakness. And for me, it was once that white started to move above magenta and started getting pivots going back below the 25 level. And those became the only interesting parts to begin short setups, and the candle range on that looks pretty small, but started to get some pretty decent moves, 8 or 10 points at the beginning of those, but then it kept reoccurring, and so your expectation is to the 0% when you see a repetitive nature of that. So when the secondary one already pivoting well below the 25 and white NBI over that, you know that even if you're shorting at those particular points, you're going to get a move back to those if there's a divergence to the upside. So those become much more safe opportunities, even within an extended run, where you at least have an idea that if it doesn't follow through with what your expectation is, you still know that you're going to be able to get out of a setup like that. But in this case, literally from the 86 ticking all the way down to the 66. So that was pretty decent. Then since the turnaround buy came, magenta leading, and it just brought it all the way back to that. So that's typically what you would expect coming back on a big up day like this, where usually you do finish towards the highs, and that's where it's sitting at right now. So there's still a ton of positive extremes if you go back to most of that initial early setup. All these at the beginning of it, all under positive extreme. So when we do get a first significant 50K sell and stuff like that, those are going to be the markers. Then I'll start putting in the lines in between as those start to fill. We filled in a few of them with the nice pullback that came through it towards the end, but still plenty more, and even towards the later part of it, all positive extremes as well. So worth noting. As always, though, continue to update anything relevant, but the paint bar pretty clean on a lot of this. And definitely love pointing that one out, because I pointed that out the other day as well when we had similar kind of spike setup of that white when it's by itself, and particularly above that 33 level, really gives poignant notation, at least if you're looking for a short side of the movement on it. So keep that one in mind. As always, though, continue to trade well. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.